I never thought I'd find myself in the position of writing this, but here I am. My name is Mark, and I've been married to Rachel for 6 years now. We had what I assumed was a great relationship, shared interests, mutual respect, the whole package, or so I thought. Over the last few months, though, I started noticing some changes. At first, they were subtle. She was busy, always glued to her phone, and seemed distant during our conversations. I brushed it off as the stress of work and life, but as things progressed, the odd behavior turned into something more alarming. Rachel used to be the first one to get home from work, always cooking dinner or planning something for us. But lately, she'd come home late, claiming she had to help a colleague with a project. The late nights didn't bother me at first. I wanted to be supportive. But after several weeks of this, I started feeling a pit of unease in my stomach. It didn't help that she'd often leave her phone unattended, and I'd catch glimpses of flirtatious messages pop up on her screen. Each time I saw a name I didn't recognize, a wave of nausea would wash over me, but I tried to suppress my suspicions. I didn't want to feel like the jealous husband. Then one night, after she had left for another late meeting, I decided I would go through the mail. We'd been neglecting it, and I figured it was time to sort through the pile. As I was flipping through it, I noticed an envelope addressed to Rachel from a name I didn't know. It was a handwritten letter, and my heart raced as I opened it. The words inside were unmistakable. "I miss you so much. Can't wait to see you again soon. Love, Jake." That was when it hit me like a train. Jake, who the hell is Jake? My blood ran cold and I felt like I was going to be sick. Suddenly everything clicked into place. The late nights, the sudden change in attitude, the secretiveness. It was all there, and I had been too blind to see it. I spent the rest of the night pacing our small living room, my mind racing through a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, disbelief, each feeling crashed over me like waves. I tried to convince myself. It was a misunderstanding, but deep down I knew the truth. Rachel was cheating on me. The next day I confronted her. I was a mess of emotions, and she came home with that same cheery attitude she wore like armor. It infuriated me. When I brought up the letter, her face went pale and she stammered. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mark." It was infuriating how easily she lied, and I could see it in her eyes. She was panicking. "Who the hell is Jake?" I pressed, my voice steady, but inside I was trembling. She hesitated, and then the excuses began pouring out. "Oh, he's just a friend from work. We were working on a project together, and I didn't want to bother you with it." The lies rolled off her tongue effortlessly. I could see how she was trying to spin it, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I could feel my heart racing with each word that came out of her mouth. I pushed her harder, trying to grasp any shred of honesty, but she just danced around the truth. It all felt surreal, like I was in some sick, twisted dream. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming mix of anger and sadness. How could she do this to me? I thought we were partners, equals. I wanted to shake her and make her see how deeply she was hurting me. Instead, I stood there feeling like a fool, waiting for her to admit the truth. But it never came. Instead, she just got defensive, calling me paranoid and saying I was crazy for even considering such a thing. It was like she was turning the tables on me, and the emotional roller coaster was just beginning. After that night, I found myself on a downward slope. I was devastated, full of rage one moment and heartbroken the next. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I tried to reason with her, hoping there was still a chance to salvage what was left of our marriage. But the more I tried, the more I felt like I was sinking into a quicksand of despair. As I sat there, replaying the confrontation in my head, I knew that I couldn't just sit back and let her get away with this. I needed a plan. I needed to confront this head on, but I also wanted to make sure I had my ducks in a row before the next confrontation. It was time to show Rachel that she couldn't just hide behind her lies. She thought she was clever, but I was done playing the fool. Little did she know, I was about to flip the script and take control of this situation. After that harrowing confrontation, I felt like I was living in a fog. Each day dragged on, and I found myself fixated on Rachel's every move. I started digging deeper, collecting evidence to confirm my worst fears. The more I uncovered, the more fueled I became. I was determined to confront her with undeniable proof of her betrayal. I had a friend, Mike, who worked in IT, and I reached out to him. Hey, I need your help with something. It's kind of personal. I felt foolish asking for help, but I was desperate. When I explained my situation, he was sympathetic but didn't seem shocked. Man, I can help you track her phone, just give me a few days. I nodded, grateful for his willingness to help. Meanwhile, I started keeping a journal, documenting everything that felt off about Rachel. The late nights, the unexplained absences, the strange messages I'd seen. I also began noting the times she'd come home smelling like someone else's cologne. It wasn't just my imagination. I had evidence that she was lying right to my face. In the days that followed, I became somewhat of a ghost in my own home. I didn't engage in our usual banter. Instead, I observed her carefully. She'd come home and try to act normal, cooking dinner and chatting about her day. Watching her play the part of a loving wife was almost unbearable. The closer we got to each other physically, the more I felt like I was suffocating. How could she betray me so easily? When Mike finally got back to me, he handed me a printout of Rachel's text message logs. My heart raced as I scrolled through the messages. There were dozens of conversations with Jake, filled with flirty banter and plans to meet. My gut twisted as I read snippets. I can't stop thinking about you. Can't wait to feel your body next to mine. Each word pierced through my heart like a dagger. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just a fling, it was an emotional affair, and I could feel my blood boiling. Armed with this new evidence, I felt a mix of empowerment and dread. I was ready to confront Rachel again, but this time I would not let her manipulate the situation. I studied her patterns, waiting for the right moment to strike. I wanted her to squirm under the weight of her own lies. A few days later, I decided to set the scene. I made sure she was home early from work, asking her to join me for dinner. I even prepared her favorite meal as a way to calm my nerves. I wanted her to feel safe, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. As we sat at the dinner table, I casually engaged in small talk, but I could feel the tension simmering beneath the surface. I looked her in the eye. You know, I've been thinking a lot about trust lately. I watched her closely, searching for any flicker of guilt on her face, but she maintained an innocent demeanor. Trust? What do you mean? She asked, feigning nonchalance. I leaned back, taking a deep breath. I mean, it's the foundation of any relationship, right? Without it, things start to fall apart. I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes as I continued, and when that trust is broken, it leaves lasting scars. I took out the printout and slid it across the table toward her. Tell me, Rachel, what's this? Care to explain? Her eyes widened as she picked it up, and the color drained from her face. What is this? Where did you get this? She sputtered, her confidence evaporating. Mike helped me out. You know that techie friend of mine, he's quite good with phones, I said, my voice steady, relishing the moment. So who is Jake? How long has this been going on? Her facade crumbled. She stammered, searching for words, any words, but all that came out were half-hearted excuses and frantic denials. It's not what you think, I swear. He's just a friend. She cried, her voice cracking under pressure, but I wasn't falling for it again. Then why do your messages sound so intimate? Why does he miss you? Why? Were you talking about feeling each other's bodies? I pressed, feeling the heat rise in me. This was it. I was finally standing up for myself. Rachel's excuses spiraled into frantic claims of misunderstanding and misinterpretation. Mark, you're going crazy. This is just work. It means nothing. The sight of her, once my partner, now a woman desperately trying to cling to her lies, fueled my rage. I slammed my hands on the table, the sound echoing in the silence that followed. You think I'm crazy. You're the one who's been betraying our marriage. You've been lying to me every single day. Her eyes darted around the room, panic written all over her face. I could see reality sinking in for her as she finally grasped the depth of what I knew. It was a moment of clarity for both of us, and I knew things would never be the same. In that confrontation, I felt an overwhelming mix of anger, sadness, and empowerment. I was done being the victim. I was done being the man who let his wife walk all over him. As the tension hung in the air between us, I realized I had a decision to make. I could either let this go on and try to salvage whatever was left of our marriage, or I could take control of my life and decide my own fate. The choice felt monumental, and I knew the aftermath wouldn't come easy. But one thing was clear. I was ready to fight for my dignity, no matter the cost. The tension in that dining room was suffocating. Rachel's face twisted in anger and disbelief, her denial slipping away as she searched for a way to manipulate the situation in her favor. "This is insane, Mark, you're overreacting," she shouted, trying to regain her footing, but deep down I could see that the facade was cracking. My heart raced with a mix of anger and adrenaline. I was finally confronting the betrayal head-on. "Insane? You want to talk about insane? How about lying to your husband and sleeping with another man?" I shot back, my voice steady, but the emotion was bubbling beneath the surface. "You've been betraying everything we built together." I could see the fight in her eyes, but I wasn't going to back down. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. Rachel's defenses crumbled further. "Mark, please, I'm sorry, it was a mistake, I didn't mean for it to happen." Her pleas sounded hollow, and it infuriated me even more. How could she act like this was some minor hiccup in our lives? I wanted her to understand the seriousness of what she had done. "A mistake? This wasn't just a mistake, Rachel. You've been seeing him for months. How do you think that makes me feel?" I could feel the hurt rising in my chest like bile. The betrayal wasn't just about the physical act, it was about the emotional connection she had formed with someone else. That was what cut the deepest. "I was lonely, okay?" she finally admitted, tears streaming down her face. "You were always working late and I didn't think it would go this far." She was trying to play the victim now, but I wasn't buying it. "Lonely? That's your excuse. I was working hard to provide for us, Rachel. I thought you understood that." I felt the anger bubbling within me, ready to explode. "You could have talked to me, but instead, you chose to cheat." The silence hung heavy in the air as the reality of her actions settled between us. I watched her face, reading the flickers of guilt and regret, but also the anger she was trying to redirect toward me. "You don't get to turn this around on me, Mark," she shouted, her voice rising again. "You're the one who made me feel neglected." It was a low blow, and I felt the sting. I had been working hard, maybe too hard, but I never thought it would come to this. Neglected. You chose to go behind my back instead of talking to me about how you felt. I felt my body shaking with emotion, the hurt and betrayal mixing with anger, creating a cocktail of pain I couldn't swallow. "Maybe if you were more present, I wouldn't have felt the need to look elsewhere," she retorted, her voice growing louder. Each word felt like a punch to the gut. I was losing control, and I realized that I needed to step back for a moment. I took a deep breath and tried to regain my composure. "I didn't come here to argue, Rachel. I came here to confront you about the truth. We can't move forward until you acknowledge what you've done." She paused, her expression softening for a moment as she started to process the weight of our situation, but then the anger returned. "What do you want, Mark? Do you want me to say I'm sorry? Do you want me to beg for your forgiveness?" "Yes, I want you to own up to what you've done. I want you to realize that you hurt me deeply." I yelled back, my frustration boiling over. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she cried, her voice breaking once more. "I just got swept up in everything. It was never supposed to be this serious." That was the moment I realized I needed to make a choice. I could feel the tears welling in my eyes, and I blinked them away, refusing to show further weakness. "You need to understand that this isn't just about you. This is about us, our marriage, and the life we built together. I need to know if you're willing to fight for this, or if you're willing to let it all go in favor of your affair." The weight of my words hung in the air, and I could see her mind racing. She looked conflicted, caught between the guilt of her actions and the fear of losing me. "I don't know, Mark," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Then I think you need to figure it out. I'm not going to be a backup plan, Rachel. You need to choose. Either you cut ties with Jake and commit to working on us, or I'm done." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the wheels turning in her head. I wanted her to realize the magnitude of the situation. I wasn't just going to let her slide back into our normal routine like nothing had happened. There had to be consequences for her actions. Eventually, she nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'll think about it." "Thinking isn't enough. I need to know you're serious about this," I said, my voice firm. "If you want a future with me, you need to cut him off completely. No more texting, no more excuses. I need to see that you're willing to fight for us." Rachel looked defeated, and for the first time I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "I will," she whispered, though I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. I took a deep breath, feeling the heaviness in the room start to lift, but I knew this was just the beginning. I had laid down the law, but the battle wasn't over. The emotional toll of the confrontation was just starting to sink in, and I could feel the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. As I walked away from the table, I felt a mix of hope and dread. I knew I had taken a stand, but I also realized that the path ahead would be rocky. Rachel had a lot of soul-searching to do, and so did I. I had to figure out what I truly wanted for my future, and whether I was willing to put in the work to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. The battle was far from over, but I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't going to be a victim any longer. I was taking control of my life, and whatever happened next would define us. Both, the days following my confrontation with Rachel were an emotional whirlwind. I had laid my cards on the table, and now it was up to her to decide if she wanted to fight for our marriage. I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. On one hand, I was proud of myself for standing my ground and demanding honesty. On the other, I was terrified of what her decision might ultimately be. Rachel remained quiet over the next week, and I could sense the tension in the air. It was almost unbearable. I found myself wondering if she was truly contemplating her choices or if she was merely stalling. Each day, I anxiously checked my phone for a message from Mike, hoping he would have some new insight or news about Rachel's activities. I needed to know if she was serious about cutting ties with Jake. One evening, after another long day at work, I came home to find Rachel sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. She looked lost in thought, and the sight of her made my heart ache. I could tell she had been crying, and as I approached her, I felt a mix of compassion and anger. "Hey," I said softly, trying to gauge her mood. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I could see the fatigue etched on her face, and it broke my heart. I wanted to comfort her, but I also felt the sting of betrayal. "I've been thinking about everything," she said, finally meeting my gaze. "About Jake, about us." My stomach twisted at the mention of his name. "And?" I asked, bracing myself for her answer. "I texted him," she admitted, looking down at her hands. "I told him it was over." A surge of relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by skepticism. "How do I know you're serious about this? I need more than just words, Rachel. I need proof." She nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know. I'm going to block him, and I'll show you. I promise. I never wanted to hurt you. I got lost." I wanted to believe her, but the scars of betrayal were deep, and trust was not something that could be easily rebuilt. "Okay, I appreciate you saying that, but it's going to take time for me to really process everything. I don't want to rush into anything without seeing real change." "I understand," she replied, her voice trembling. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I love you, Mark." Hearing those words felt both comforting and unsettling. I wanted to believe her, but a part of me was still wounded. As the days passed, I kept my distance, uncertain of how to navigate this new terrain. I needed to protect my heart, but I also didn't want to shut her out completely. The following week, Rachel did what she promised. She blocked Jake and deleted all their messages. I watched her go through her phone, and while I felt a flicker of hope, I also recognized that actions speak louder than words. I needed to observe her behavior, not just listen to her claims. One Friday night, after a long week, I came home ready to relax. Rachel had planned a small surprise dinner for us, and I could see the effort she put into it. The candles were lit, and the table was set beautifully. For a moment, I forgot about the tension between us, and I allowed myself to enjoy the evening. As we sat down to eat, I couldn't help but notice how different she seemed. She was more engaged and attentive, laughing at jokes and reminiscing about happier times. "Remember our trip to the beach?" she asked, a smile slowly creeping up her lips. "You got sunburned, and we had to spend the whole day in the shade." "Yeah, and you laughed at me the entire time," I replied, chuckling at the memory. Felt good to share those moments, and for an instant I could almost believe that everything would be okay. But as we finished dinner and moved to the couch, the heaviness returned. I looked at her, searching for clarity. "Are you really committed to making this work?" I asked, my voice steady but carrying the weight of my fears. "Yes, absolutely." She reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. "I know I messed up and I can't change that, but I want to make things right. I'll do anything to prove it to you." Her sincerity was evident, but the doubt still lingered in the back of my mind. "It's going to take time, Rachel. I need to see consistent effort. I don't want to get hurt again." "I promise I'll show you," she said earnestly. "We can go to counseling, talk things through, whatever you need." "Counseling might be a good idea," I replied cautiously. I didn't want to rush into anything that could lead us back down the road of distrust, but I also knew we had to address the issues that led us to this point. As the weeks passed, we began attending counseling sessions together. It was a difficult and sometimes painful process, but I could see Rachel genuinely trying to understand her actions and the impact they had on me. The therapist guided us through our feelings, encouraging open communication. Slowly but surely, we started to find common ground. Rachel opened up about her feelings of loneliness and inadequacy, and I expressed my frustrations about feeling neglected. It was raw and emotional, but it felt like we were finally making progress. However, the road to healing was not without bumps. There were moments when I would catch myself feeling insecure, wondering if she was really committed or if she would slip back into her old ways. I would often find myself staring at my phone, waiting for a message from Mike to confirm my fears. Then one day, as I was scrolling through my social media, I stumbled across a post that made my heart sink. A picture of Rachel, smiling and laughing with friends, including Jake, appeared on my feed. The caption read, "So glad to see old friends. Can't wait for more fun times." I felt the world tilt beneath me. My first instinct was to scream, to lash out, but instead I felt hollow. I couldn't believe it. After everything we'd been through, she was still seeing him. My heart raced as I took deep breaths to calm the storm brewing inside me. When Rachel came home that evening, I confronted her. "You said you cut ties with Jake, but I just saw a picture of you with him on social media. What's going on, Rachel?" The look on her face said it all. "I can explain." She stammered, but I wasn't in the mood for excuses. "Explain what? That you lied to me again?" I felt the anger bubble to the surface, and the pain of betrayal rushed back in waves. "After everything we've been through, you're still hanging out with him." "I didn't mean to. It was a group thing. I didn't know he would be there," she protested, her voice rising in defense. "Doesn't matter, Rachel. You should have known better. This is exactly why I have trust issues with you." She looked defeated, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But the anger was too fresh, too raw. "I thought we were moving forward. I thought you understood how serious this was," I continued, my voice shaking with emotion. "I'm trying, I really am," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted to have a good time like we used to, but I wasn't having it. This isn't just about having fun anymore, Rachel. This is about trust, and you keep shattering it." As the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stuck in a cycle of pain and betrayal. I had fought so hard to save our marriage, but it felt like she was still playing games. I needed clarity and resolution, and it was time to confront the reality of our situation. The path ahead was growing murky, and I could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. I had to make a decision. Was I willing to fight for a love that seemed to waver, or was it finally time to let go? That night, after the confrontation, I found myself pacing the living room, the weight of uncertainty heavy on my shoulders. Rachel had retreated to our bedroom, and the silence was almost deafening. I felt torn between anger and a deep-seated sadness. I had fought so hard to rebuild our relationship, but it felt like we kept hitting walls. I couldn't shake the image of Rachel's face when I confronted her about the photo. The mix of guilt and defiance etched in her expression made my blood boil. Had she really thought she could get away with hanging out with Jake after everything? I felt betrayed all over again, and the frustration bubbled within me. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over Mike's contact. I needed to talk to someone who could help me process everything. I sent him a quick message asking if we could meet up. Within minutes he replied, and we arranged to meet at a local bar. I needed a drink and I needed to vent. When I arrived, Mike was already waiting for me. He could tell something was off as soon as I sat down. "What's going on, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." I sighed heavily, running a hand through my hair. "It's Rachel. I thought we were making progress, but she just lied to me again. I saw her with Jake at a party." She told me she cut him off, but clearly that wasn't true. Mike frowned, taking a sip of his beer. Damn, I'm sorry to hear that. Have you talked to her about it? Of course, I confronted her, but all I got were excuses. I just don't know what to believe anymore. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. It's like we're stuck in this cycle of betrayal and distrust, and I'm exhausted. Have you considered that maybe it's time to put yourself first? He suggested. I mean, you can't keep going like this. You deserve to be happy, Mark. I know, but I don't want to give up on our marriage without trying everything. I love her and I want to believe she can change. Love is important, but it shouldn't come at the cost of your self-respect. You need to consider what this relationship is doing to you. If she's not committed to making things right, then maybe it's time to walk away. Mike's words resonated with me. I took a long sip of my drink and pondered what he was saying. I felt like I was on a tightrope, balancing between love for Rachel and the need to protect myself. I just don't want to regret my decision later. What if I end things and she really does want to change? Then you can always revisit it later, but you can't let her keep dragging you down, he said, his tone earnest. You deserve someone who is all in, especially after what you've been through. His words lingered in my mind as I batted around the possibilities. I had been so focused on saving our marriage that I hadn't taken time to consider what I wanted. Mike continued to offer support, and I felt a sense of relief in sharing my burden with someone who understood. As the night wore on, I made up my mind. I needed to set a boundary and give Rachel one last chance, but with firm conditions. I didn't want to be the only one making sacrifices anymore. When I returned home, I found Rachel sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes red from crying. I took a deep breath before speaking. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady but filled with fatigue. Mark, I'm really sorry about earlier. I didn't mean for you to see that picture. It was stupid and I should have known better, she said, her voice shaky. I appreciate that you're sorry, but it's not enough anymore. I can't keep doing this, I replied firmly, feeling the weight of my decision settle over me. I need to know that you're committed to making this work, and I need you to show me that you're serious about cutting ties with Jake. I am. I promise I'll do better, she pleaded, her eyes pleading with me. Rachel, I need more than promises, I need actions. No more hanging out with him and no more secrets. I'm willing to give this another shot, but I need to see consistent effort from you. Otherwise, I can't keep putting myself through this pain. Her expression shifted from desperation to realization. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll cut him off completely. No more contact, I swear. And we need to keep going to counseling. This isn't something we can fix overnight, I added, feeling like I was finally taking control of the situation. I agree. I want to work on this, she said, her voice stronger now. I want to rebuild your trust. I don't want to lose you. As I looked into her eyes, I saw a glimmer of sincerity. It was a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. I felt a flicker of hope, but I knew it would take time to rebuild the trust that had been broken. We spent the following weeks in counseling, working on communication and accountability. Rachel was committed to her word, and while there were moments of doubt, I could see her making an effort. She shared her feelings and opened up about her insecurities, and for the first time, I felt like we were both on the same page. However, as much as I wanted to believe everything was getting better, the shadow of betrayal still loomed over our relationship. I found myself wrestling with the emotional scars, and there were nights when I would lie awake, wondering if I could truly forgive her. It was during one of those sleepless nights that I realized that while I wanted to fight for our marriage, I also needed to prioritize my own healing. I turned to my journal, writing down my thoughts and feelings, allowing myself to process everything. It became a safe space for me to explore my emotions without judgment. Then one day, during a particularly emotional session, our therapist encouraged us to revisit the reasons we fell in love in the first place. What were the things that brought you joy in your relationship? She asked, her voice gentle. As I reflected on those moments, I felt a mix of nostalgia and sorrow. I remembered the laughter, the adventures, and the dreams we had shared. I realized that while we had lost our way, there was still a flicker of love that remained. It gave me hope that we could rebuild, but I also knew it would require both of us to be fully committed. As we continued our sessions, I felt the bond between us strengthening gradually. I began to see Rachel in a new light, not just as a partner who had betrayed me, but as someone who was also capable of growth and change. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I felt overwhelmed by the weight of the past, but I was willing to fight for our future. But as the weeks turned into months, I started to realize that I couldn't ignore my own needs any longer. I had to consider if I was truly happy. I began to ask myself whether I was staying because I loved her or because I was afraid of being alone. It was a painful realization, but one I needed to confront. Ultimately, I knew I had to make the hard choice. Was I willing to continue this journey with Rachel, or was it time to finally let go? The answer remained elusive, but I had to face it sooner rather than later. As I lay in bed one night staring at the ceiling, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I had to choose what was best for my future, regardless of how difficult it would be. The path ahead wasn't clear, but it was time to take a stand, one way or another. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I knew that I was ready to confront the truth. Whether it meant rebuilding my marriage or walking away, I would face whatever came with courage and resolve. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to wrestle with my feelings. Rachel was genuinely trying to prove her commitment to changing, but I found myself questioning whether I could ever fully trust her again. Despite her efforts, the shadow of her betrayal loomed over us, casting doubt on every interaction. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, I found myself sitting on the porch, staring out into the darkening sky. The stars twinkled overhead, but all I could think about was the weight of my indecision. I knew I had to make a choice, so I took out my journal and began writing. I scribbled down my thoughts, allowing myself to explore the depths of my emotions. Rachel joined me outside, and I could see the concern etched on her face. "What's going on, Mark?" she asked, her voice soft. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her question settle in my chest. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything that's happened. I need to be honest." Her eyes widened, and I could see the apprehension in her expression. "Okay, I'm listening." I paused for a moment, gathering my thoughts. "You've been making a real effort to change, and I appreciate that, but I can't keep pretending that everything is okay. I'm still really hurt by what happened, and I'm not sure if I can fully trust you again." Tears began to well in her eyes. "I understand. I know I've hurt you, and I wish I could take it back, but I'm trying to show you that I'm serious about us." "I know you are," I said, feeling the gravity of the moment. "But I also need to consider what's best for me. I can't keep putting in all the effort while feeling like this." Rachel's face fell, and for a moment, silence hung between us. "Are you saying you want to end things?" she asked, her voice breaking. I shook my head, feeling my heart ache at the thought. "I don't want to give up on us, but I need to know that you're fully committed to repairing what's broken. I can't be in a relationship where I constantly feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I promise I'll keep fighting for us, Mark." "I don't want to lose you," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I believe you, but I also need to prioritize my own well-being. Maybe we need to take a step back from our relationship for a while, just until we both figure out what we want." Her expression shifted from desperation to understanding. "You're saying you want space?" "Yes. I think it's what we need. I need to focus on my healing, and you need to focus on proving your commitment. This doesn't have to be the end. It can be a chance for both of us to reflect on what we really want." Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can accept that. I just want you to be happy, even if it means taking a step back." We talked long into the night, laying everything on the table. It was painful, but it was also liberating. We shared our fears, our hopes, and our dreams. I realized that while love was still there, it was intertwined with the scars of betrayal. I needed time to heal, to discover who I was outside of our marriage, and to decide if I could truly forgive. In the weeks that followed, we lived separately but maintained open lines of communication. We both took the time to reflect on what we wanted and needed, and it was one of the hardest things I had ever done. I explored new hobbies, reconnected with friends, and found solace in writing. I wanted to rediscover who I was without the weight of Rachel's betrayal hanging over me. As the days turned into months, I began to feel more at peace. I found joy in the little things, and I started to heal. Rachel also worked on herself, attending therapy and focusing on her growth. We checked in with each other regularly, and while the feelings were still raw, there was a sense of respect that developed from our time apart. One evening, I invited Rachel over to share a meal. As we sat across from each other, I noticed a change in our dynamic. There was less tension and more understanding. "How have you been?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she replied, her expression earnest. "I miss you, Mark, but I've also learned a lot about myself. I realize now how my actions affected you and our relationship." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. "I've missed you too, but I've also learned a lot about what I need in a partner. It's going to take time to rebuild our trust." "I'm willing to put in that time," she said softly. "I want to show you that I'm committed to making this work." As the evening wore on, we reminisced about the good times and shared our goals for the future. It felt different this time, lighter. There was a glimmer of hope, and I could see a path forward. After several months apart, we decided to take baby steps toward rebuilding our relationship. We agreed to start dating again, to rediscover each other without the pressure of the past hanging over us. I felt nervous yet excited. The journey was far from easy. There were moments of doubt and insecurity, but we both worked hard to communicate openly. Slowly but surely, I began to allow myself to trust Rachel again. In the end, I learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's about weathering the storms together and coming out stronger on the other side. Our relationship may never be the same as it once was, but we were both committed to learning and growing together. And while the road ahead would still be challenging, I knew that I had taken control of my life. I had learned the importance of self-worth and the value of open communication. It was a lesson I would carry with me, regardless of where our journey took us next. So, as I reflect on everything we've been through, I remind myself that healing is a journey, not a destination. Each step forward, no matter how small, is a step toward a brighter future. Together or apart, I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to face it head on.